All right. Okay. So tonight we are going to discuss chapter 11 of our book, Managing IT Projects. And I think that this chapter is particularly important when we think of managing IT in general, because IT, differently to other functions in the organizations, tends to be run as projects, at least when we're talking about the strategic uses of IT. Of course, we do use IT as a, let's say we do use IT as a regular function to simply execute the operation of our organizations. But in those cases, we're just being a support function, as we have already discussed in the very early chapters of the book. When we were discussing strategy, we said that there are two ways in which IT and any other function, as a matter of fact, can perform strategically in an organization. The most basic way, or the simplest way that a function can support a strategy, is basically allowing the organization to become more efficient, right? To do whatever it usually does in a, following a, let's say, a more proper process. So IT many times is used in that sense, which means automating processes or making processes, let's say, improve processes in terms of the quality of its execution, doing something in a better way than before. But the times where IT really causes a great impact in organizations is when it's there to transform the business, to allow the business to do different things to what it did in the past, right? And when we're transforming a business, this doesn't happen only for the IT function. I believe that transformation of a business can also happen based on different functions. For example, marketing. If you think of the Havaianas example here in Brazil, for example, marketing changed an organization that was very focused on producing a cheap product to the market into a company that produces a product that is perceived as being very, very valuable to the customer. So in the past, the thongs that Havaiana produced were seen as the cheapest option of footwear that someone could have. Nowadays, marketing changed the customer's perception about that product, and nowadays wearing Havaianas is not any longer related to someone's choice or only alternative of wearing the cheapest footwear that one could. So let's see, marketing can also be used to either emphasize what a company already does or to change what it does. In the case of Havaianas, marketing changed what the company was selling. Instead of selling the cheapest products in the market, it reverted the idea of customers and started selling a product that had that was almost like a brand product. Okay, so the same happens with production, the operation itself. For example, when Henry Ford decided on a different way of producing automobiles using a mass production line, that change in the process was strategically very important, and it was still changing the process, changing the way of doing things, and therefore focusing more on efficiency, right? But in that case, in that specific case of Ford, for example, it was changing the process, but it was changing so radically the process that was used to manufacture automobiles that it gave Ford a huge competitive advantage with respect to its to the competition. So whenever it happens that we are using a function to change things, to do things radically differently, regardless of if we're talking about improving our efficiency or being more effective. Here, I mean, improving the process or changing what we do. Whenever we are proposing these radical changes, I think there's no situation in which that is not done through projects. Right? We have to get rid of our traditional way of doing things and embrace a different way of doing. But this embracing a new way of doing it before it becomes the regular operation, at least for a while, it is a project. The project is this process of changing from one situation to the other, right? And then what I'm trying to emphasize here is that this idea that projects are basically, at least strategically, projects are ways of taking the organization from one level to a next level of performance. Of course, there are there are companies that are basically what they sell is projects, right? When a company sells projects become almost like the regular operation. It actually becomes the regular operation of that company. It does one project after the other, but it performs those projects almost as if it was if it were in a production line, let's say, right? So there is a possibility of thinking of projects as simply the way of performing the regular operation of a company. Chapter 11, when they're talking about managing IT projects here, they're not talking about this kind of situation. For example, situations that are faced by a consulting firm. For example, a consulting firm, any new sale that it makes is a new project that it will run for a certain time, right? But most companies organize their value creation in two different ways. It's either through their regular operations, what they do as their usual business, which could also be projects, or they're trying to change what they do, or they're trying to change how they do things, so trying to change the process or the product itself. And in those cases, we're talking about very special projects because it's projects that the company itself only intends to do once. I may be circling here to say that we're not going to be discussing projects that are developed by a firm one after the other, to as a service provided to their customers. What this chapter here is about is projects that tend to be even more special in the sense that they are trying to change the level of the business proposition a company has, and in that sense, it's very strategic, right? Very strategic, but at the same time, as we'll see many times, very risky. And basically, and when we're talking about IT projects, they become even riskier than projects that are undertaken by other functions in an organization, because IT projects tend to always involve very new technology, and therefore something that nobody knows very well yet how it works. It tends to involve a lot of complexity, and in that case, again, the more complex a project is, the riskier it will be. And in fact, IT projects are particular enough for us to pay special attention to them. Remember that the authors of this book were not writing this book to IT managers. They were writing this book to be a way for managers of different areas in the organization to better understand how to deal with the IT function. Understanding that many of you, in fact, the majority here, are perform in IT departments or as IT managers. We always have to think that our perspective here is always the perspective of the business, not the perspective of the technology itself, right? Also, having said that, the IT projects become very important for organizations because there's a lot of money involved, new ideas, new technologies. Whenever we have new technologies, prices, the price tags of bringing those technologies to the business tend to be high, simply because those that are developing the new technologies are still in a phase of trying to, let's see, to be compensated by their investments in the development process, right? When everyone is already using a technology, that means that a lot of companies have already paid for it, and therefore those who are selling the technology do not have to be so focused on recovering the costs of development any longer. This is why technology usually has a let's say a price curve that tends to be the products tend to be very expensive at the beginning, and then they become much cheaper later, because the development costs have already been covered, and because technology in general, as knowledge in general, does not have any costs of replication. After you know something, using it twice doesn't cost more than using it once, right? So replicating technology tends to be very cheap in terms of what we could call the marginal cost of producing another unit. So selling to a second customer allows, if we have two customers, it means that we can charge each one of them half of what we would charge if we had only one customer for our knowledge. Let's say if you have 1,000 customers, then the price tag may already be the thousands of what it would be if you only envision selling that product to one customer. All right, I will share here with you the book so that you can follow with me. Okay. So one thing that I highlighted here is that since business and IS are often one and the same in today's environment, managing a business project means managing to a large degree an IS project. So see that the marketing manager or the operations manager or the accounting manager, whoever has thinks of changes in its own function, in its own way of working these days, tends to involve digital transformation, and therefore tends to involve an IT project happening alongside. So in fact, the fact that IT is in the middle of almost any change project that happens in an organization these days means that there is IT involvement in almost any situation in which a company is trying to do differently what it did in the past, or to do different things that what it did in the past. So here they show some typical projects that are carried out by organizations and that do not necessarily involve simply the IT function working to, let's say, to improve IT functions, to improve its own performance, but to improve other parts of the business. So many times what you're trying to do is to promote digital convergence, to right size the organization. Notice that right sizing means that now that we can use IT to better control our processes, we many times need less people to do what in the past needed more people. So right sizing here really means downsizing, at least in terms of numbers of people. Re-engineering business processes. We have already discussed the concept of re-engineering in a previous class. Re-engineering basically means that it's a concept from the 1990s, but it basically means rethinking your processes from scratch, starting based on a blank sheet of paper, right? No preconceived ideas, and mainly no attachments to previous investments that the company may already have made. For example, re-engineering forgets about any what we call sunk costs. Sunk costs are those costs that you have already put in processes that there is a tendency that you will try to keep using simply because they are there, right? But re-engineering says, forget all the investment that you've done in the past. We may use some of it, but it's important to start thinking this new project of this re-engineered way of doing things without being attached to the technologies or the infrastructure that we already have, because the technology and the infrastructure that we already have are there as a response to a situation that made sense in the past. And re-engineering is challenging all those things that made sense in the past and may not make sense any longer. Right? Very difficult to develop re-engineering processes because it's very difficult for us to get rid of thinking about those investments that we've already made. Right? I mentioned, I think, in a previous class, for example, how difficult it was for Kodak to, let's say, to move from regular photography to digital photography, simply because they were the owners of a lot of silver mines around the world, simply because they needed this. I think it was a silver salt or something that was used in the development of traditional of film. When you already own those assets, it's difficult to say, well, we don't need that any longer. Let's forget that exists. It's millions, sometimes billions of dollars in there, claiming that find a way of keeping using me. Right? In fact, in this chapter here, I think there is at least a couple of situations. I don't know if I have highlighted them here, but if I see, I can point it out to you later, in which they say, well, look, we as managers that are deciding on projects and deciding on or even in regular processes of doing things, we should know when to stop. I think that there is one topic there that was about, you know, the time when you have to unplug. I don't recall exactly the term that they use, but it's basically unplug from the wall, turn it off, forget that you were doing that. You already know that it did not work. It's many times it's important. It's probably important to acknowledge that a project failed instead of keep insisting each time further to try and make it successful when we already know that it did not work. Right? It will show up here. So re-engineering involves this idea of forget. Don't be tied to any decisions that you've made before. You have to think what makes more sense for the future, and that may also mean, you know, simply forgetting about the past, adopting more comprehensive and integrative processes, and incorporating new information technologies. They claim here that firms seek to compete through new products and processes. Right? Competing through new products means we want to become more effective. Competing through new processes means we want to be more efficient. But the work is the work of initially building or radically changing them falls outside the scope of normal business operations. Normal business operations are those repetitive ones. Right? And again, this chapter here is not about repetitive operations, things that we do all the time. Those things we know how to do. We have been doing for a long time. We have been perfecting them for a long time. And in fact, they can be perfected, but they can be perfected through continuous improvement, right? Through the Japanese way of improving quality. Projects involve innovating. In fact, I was watching this morning. I was watching a TED, one of those TED talks, in which, well, the guy who was giving the talk was saying that all that we do in education is preventing people from being innovative, right? So he was basically claiming for innovation and saying that education goes against innovation. And I was sort of fighting against that idea because although it's obvious, right? If we keep it and if we think about the process of education is telling those that are learning specific ways of doing things, and if they try to divert from that, if they try to do something different, we say no, this is the right way. Don't. So we are in fact we are trying. I have to agree that education is a process of killing innovation. I have to give the let's say the speaker this. I agree with him that we to a great extent, when we educate people, we turn them into less innovative people. And when we talk, but only if we think of innovation here as this disruptive innovation, right? It's difficult for us to create something very different from what has already been created after someone shows us the things that other humans have already thought of in the past, right? I agree with that. At the same time, I could not agree with this guy that we should change education in a way that we try and make people more innovative in everything that they do. Because although we live in very disruptive times where it's each time less, let's say, less possible for us to base in our previous knowledge to decide what we're going to think next.
Hello.
Hello? You want to say something, Saulo? No. So although we want to be creative, at the same time, education is understanding that we have already created a lot, and that there's a lot that we can learn with, let's say, I can't say with our own mistakes, but with the mistakes of our own society, right?
Alô,
Hello, Saulo. Yeah.
sim.
Oh, I think it's just
Já
turn
que eu
off
tinha
your mic.
acordado mesmo, tava não.
I think let me see if I can kill Saulo's mic here so that he doesn't. I don't think that he knows that his mic is on. Just a second.
Beleza, mas. Bom, que a gente não pode, né? Ou pode comprar? Que a gente já tem os ingressos, não tem?
Okay. At least he's not going to say something that he will regret, telling that the class is really boring. All right. So what I was saying again, going back to the guy, you understand that I understand that we knowing something makes it less difficult for us to jump into a complete new future. On the other hand, knowing something makes it much easier for us to learn based on the knowledge of others that spent also a long time learning. So I just again today we're talking when we're talking about projects and when we're thinking about re-engineering everything, we want to forget what we know to think out of the box. But I just think that we should also understand that thinking in the box is what has made humans survive nature, dominate nature, and maybe at this time probably destroy nature. So maybe this is the time to think out of the box, because we were so good at using the knowledge of others that came before us to get to where we got, that we many times still think with the ideas that they did. Right? In the past, it was very important to find ways of dominating nature, for example. Now we are in a situation where, I mean, nature is dominated, right? So there's no reason why we should keep trying to dominate nature. I usually say that if we were if this was a judo fight, nature is there hitting the floor and saying stop, I quit, right? And we keep using let's say the same logic that our ancestors used to dominate some nature when nature is absolutely and completely dominated and is struggling to survive. Well, this is all to say that we should try to at some stages find ways of thinking out of the box and try to do this re-engineering way, but at the same time don't buy it too cheap, this idea that we kill innovation we through our traditional way of doing things. Basically what we are learning in what education brings to us is basically ideas of how others succeeded in the past, and then we'll have to figure out what part of that is still valuable for the future. Okay. All right, then we get here to the definition of what a project is. And what the authors say here is that organizations combine two types of work, projects and operations, to transform resources into profits. I think this is, I've been mumbling about here, is I was saying that there's two ways in which we can generate value. One of them is by doing what we have been doing, and that there are still customers that are interested in that. And another one is by doing different things or in different ways, which would be projects. Okay. The traditional operation is a repetitive sort of effort. We're doing basically the same. And notice, as I said before, even projects can become a repetitive operation. For example, in the case of a consulting firm. I don't know if any of you work for a consulting firm that only develops projects for customers, or if you work in an organization that what it provides to its customers is the result of projects. Does anyone only, let's say, sell projects? All of you are in businesses that do tend to have a regular operation, something that happens day after day, let's say. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I'd say most companies tend to even if they develop projects, let's say a consulting firm like this. IT in IT, there are a lot of consulting firms, for example, to implement ERPs. Right, they're specialists in getting to a company and helping that company implement a new enterprise resource planning system. It makes sense that you bring someone from the outside to help you with that, because that's something for you. It's just a project. It's something that only happens once, and in fact, there's a lot of novelty there, a lot of things that you don't know about, simply because you're doing it for the first time and possibly just one time, right? Too. But then a company that is specialized in helping other companies implement their enterprise resource planning systems, they have experience with other companies that they helped in the past. They know things that worked well, they know things that didn't work well, so they turned what for you is a project, for them it's their regular operation. Okay? Although I understand it as being also a project, but it's a very, in their case, it's a very repetitive project. And in fact, the definition of project involves something that you don't do regularly. So when I say that the project for them becomes something repetitive, we're sort of killing the project side of it. If you think, for example, of an engineer, an engineer can, let's say, draw the sketch of a house for a family, and that may be the result of several interviews with the family to understand exactly how that family performs, the number of people that will live in the house, and so on and so forth, and if the parents work from home or not, if people like cooking, they want a big kitchen, or they want a big living room, or a project may be very focused on that customer, and it's very, let's say, in that case, it's very non-repetitive. But you can also have a project of a house that is the engineer basically repeats it one after the other for one of these, let's say, government house developing projects, and all the houses are going to be basically the same, right? So you turn the project, what used to be the project of a house, it becomes a repetitive thing of simply doing all houses exactly the same. Here they claim that a project is a temporary endeavor. This is important. It's temporary. Projects have a starting point, some development, something that will happen, that is the project itself, and an end point, right? Projects do have an end. Project starts, when you start a project, you already have in your mind the fact that will end someday. So this makes it very different what a project is to what an organization is, right? A company is not planned to have an end. A company is planned to survive times, to be there forever. The main purpose of a company is to survive the market, keep living as an organization, right? So notice that's an important difference of a project to a continuous operation. So this is a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product. So this is another characteristic that is important for a project. The result is something new, unique, different from anything that you have done before. This is why it tends to be riskier, because it's something that you haven't done, right? Temporary means that every project has a definite beginning and a definite end. And I don't know if any of you have already been involved in a project where everyone is trying to push the end towards the future, simply because it's definitely not to the interest of the project, right? The projects themselves, of course, they don't have their own willing, but by definition, a project wants to be concluded. Sometimes there may be misalignments in the interests of the project and some of the stakeholders involved with the project. So this is something that also makes it riskier to develop a project, because some of the stakeholders may wish to extend the project simply maybe to get paid for a few more months, or for whatever other reason, while they're looking for another job, and so on and so forth. So notice that all tends to also contribute to the riskiness of projects. There may not be a complete alignment among the interests of all those involved. So we have to, if we're involved in projects, we have to pay a lot of attention to the project stakeholders. And who are the project stakeholders? Individuals and organizations that either are involved in the project or whose interests may be affected as a result of the project. If there is misalignment, and there will be misalignment between the interests of the project and the interests of at least some of the stakeholders, that needs to be mapped by the project manager and by those that intend the project to succeed, to make sure that the situations are cared for, right? When I discuss projects with my undergraduate students, I usually create a table with them with several lines, and in each line I tell them, write let's say the name of the stakeholder. The name could be the name of the person, but it could also be, let's say, the IT manager, the marketing manager, or the people in the operation. And so write all the stakeholders, one in each line, and then in the columns try to anticipate those people's perceptions about the projects, what they expect from the projects, what will be the benefits they will get from the projects, what will be the let's say the anticipated resistance that you can think, depending on how the project itself or the results of the project may go against their interests. So I call that a Machiavellic table, of course, in honor of Niccolo Machiavelli, who was a strategist. Of course, we all know him for being a very Machiavellic person. So probably I would not write in a book, I would not call it a Machiavellic table, but it's basically a table where I want to understand, before being the project manager, I want to understand people's interest in getting involved and people's interest in the success of the project, and what would be their interests in different directions, so that I can manage. As a manager, I need to manage people and their efforts to make sure that the project is successful, right? Successful based on my understanding of what the success should be. Right? In this chapter here, they do not discuss. Well, they do discuss the stakeholders here. They make us understand that different stakeholders will have different impressions, and that their actions may be more or less aligned with the interests of the project, but they don't go that deep into this. And I think that this is very important. In fact, many projects fail not because of their I think there is a table here that shows that. Let me see. Many projects, when we're thinking about that's I think it's on page 265 that it talks about the success dimensions. So many times you're okay with some of the results. For example, you're able to anticipate the impact on customers. You're able to even measure the business success, but you do not pay enough attention to resource constraints, and resource constraints many times involve also human resource constraints and the interests of involved stakeholders. They show here, hang on, is this or not? I think it's a little further. They show this triangle here, in which they claim that there are three main aspects of a project: time, cost, and scope. And that whenever you have any issues with one of these three elements, the other two will also be affected. So, for example, if you need to finish the project earlier than originally planned, or than planned, you will probably have to hire more people, and that will increase the costs. Or you will have to sacrifice the scope, reduce the scope of the project, so that you can finish in that time. At the same time, if you want to reduce the costs of a project, that will probably affect the scope. You either need to have a not such a broad scope, or it will affect time. So projects are always involve those three dimensions, and you have to keep thinking of them and managing the three of them together, because any changes in scope will have its effect on cost and time. Any changes in time, in the timing, will have its effects on scope and cost, and so on and so forth. They claim here that a successful balance of scope, time, and cost yields a high-quality project, one that will need one in which the needs and expectations of users are met. But many times, because projects are something that is new, it's difficult for you to define very precisely the scope from the beginning. It's difficult for you, and considering that the projects are referred to something that you don't do often, it's difficult to estimate the time as precisely as you wished. And again, because it's something that you don't do every day, it's difficult to anticipate all sources of costs that will be incurred in a project, and therefore it's very usual, very common that projects do not reach the scope that was planned, cost more than you had planned, and do not happen in the time that one wished. Most projects end up extrapolating what had been thought for those. And I wouldn't say that it's because we are optimistic when we let's say we plan projects. It's simply because being something that is unknown, Murphy may attack in several different ways, and actually doing a good planning of the project is probably more important to try and remedy for the things that you were not able to anticipate than to make sure that things happen exactly the way you plan. So you plan already knowing that your plan is going to need a lot of revisions during the project itself, at least to try and keep some let's say somewhere close to the ideas of cost, time, and scope that you had planned originally. Here they show a few questions about the success factors. So they say that the key success factors factor is not only is only one metric to use when managing a project. Stakeholders are concerned about all facets of a project. So we have questions, for example, respecting to measuring and tracking progress is often done by tracking time. So you can, for example, ask yourself, how are we doing compared to the schedule? And in fact, for those of you who have already worked on projects, you know that nowadays we have several software tools that allow us to plan for scheduling, for the schedule of things that we have to do, based on tasks that need other tasks to already have been accomplished before they can be developed, right? So basically, there is they even talk. The chapter here doesn't mention that, because again, this chapter is very focused on projects from a very strategic view. They're not, the idea of the chapter here is not provide us with tools to actually manage the project. It's more to make us aware of the risks involved and the techniques that can be used for project management. But when we get closer to let's say to the how to do it, most of these software, for example, claim that it's very important to determine what they call a critical path. The critical path is the set of tasks that need to be done, and that one can only be done after the previous task has already been completed. And then when you sum up the times of all these tasks that require the completion of another task before it can be done, when you sum the timing of all of them, then you know that it's impossible to develop that project in less time than that. For example, if we had a very simple project of let's say preparing lunch, right? There are some things that can happen in parallel, tasks that can be developed in parallel, but others can only happen one after the other. For example, I cannot serve the meal before I cook it. So there's the cooking time, then there's the time of setting the table, and setting the table may happen in parallel. But let's say I'm a horrible cook here, so I cannot let's say I cannot cook the meat before I unfreeze it. So I'll have to unfreeze the meat and then I'll have to cook it later. So there are tasks that need to be one after the other. And when we sum up the times of all those tasks, we get to this critical path, which is the minimum time that may be required for the project as a whole. Here they also say that we should ask ourselves questions about the cost, for example. How are we doing compared to the budget, compared to the plan related to how much we were expecting to spend on the projects? We should ask questions about the scope. Are we on track to provide the intended functionality? Right. When we finish the project, the result will be that what let's say the stakeholders intended. And one problem that we have with IT projects is that many times if the project takes long, maybe when the project is ready, that's not what the organization needs any longer. That's not what the customers want any longer. So this is one of the reasons why, and we'll see here in this chapter, many times for IT projects, we try to develop projects engaging the customer or engaging the stakeholders during the whole process. So if their needs change during the project, we can have those changes brought to the project, right? So we claim that the project needs has a scope, has a timing, and has a cost that we need to pre-plan, because of course we have to agree with maybe the finance departments. But the fact is that during the development of the project, many times the stakeholders' needs change, and we'll have to make changes to the scope, to the timing, and to the costs. And remember, if you make changes to any of them, the others will also be affected. Again, questions about resources. How much of our resources have we consumed so far, considering that we need those resources to complete the project? With respect to the quality of the project, is the quality of the output, the deliverables, at the level required for success? And also with respect to risks, how are we doing managing the risk associated with this project? Remember, we've already talked in one of our very early classes about IT governance. It's important that we have some governance on the risks and how these risks may impact the business itself, not necessarily and not only the project, but the business. One of the examples that the authors bring in this chapter is of an airline company that has a reservation system. If the reservation system doesn't work accordingly, they have to stop flying, because they cannot sell tickets and they cannot book customers to the seats in the plane. And basically, although the airplane is capable of doing the flight, it does not depend on the reservation system. The fact that the reservation system is not working may mean that the whole business fails. Okay. So they claim that a successful business project often begins with a well-written business case that spells out the components of the project. Why is it so important to have a well-written business case to start the project from? Remember, projects are unknown in terms of nobody has done it yet. So if we're doing something that nobody knows exactly what the results are going to be, it's important that we understand very precisely what people's needs are. So, and at the same time, if we are proposing a project to others, it's important that they understand very well what we are proposing, especially if they are the ones who have to put the effort, right? And when I mean here the effort, it could be the money, if we're talking about the company, or actually the work, if we're talking about people that will be committed. Is it clear where we are going with the project? So this is where they think if it's not clear, a project, if it's not clear from the beginning, we better spend more time dealing with that before we progress. let me see, Guilherme has written something here. Let me see if I can see. If you had a well-written business case, you can pass to the teammates and had a clarified routes and goals for the company or project. Yeah, the business case, in fact, I don't like the term exactly business case, but you have to have a story that is well understood of let's say the project manager has to develop some storytelling here to tell what he understands that the project is about, and check with the stakeholders if that's what they understand that needs to be done. And of course, those things have to be, let's say, put together, and so you make sure that everyone understands what's being done, what isn't, what is the scope, and also what is not the scope of the project. Because when the scope is vague, and if the scope is vague, tendency is that each one will imagine their own results. And at the end, the result is going to frustrate everyone because everyone is thinking of something different. So it's important to have this as clear as possible. The business case should here clearly articulate project details and argue for resources for it. It keeps saying here that a strong business plan developed from the business case gives all members of the project team a reference document to help guide decisions and activities. So it makes everyone be, let's say, as the Americans say, everyone is on the same page, right? Everyone's thinking the same. Project management software is often used to manage projects and keep track of key metrics. They mention a few of those project management software here. They mentioned 4 or 5 of them, but they say that there are at least 14 others that also have hundreds of thousands of users. In fact, Microsoft Project is used by many people because it's part of well, it's not necessarily part of the Office suite of Microsoft, but depending on how fat your Office is, it will be there, right? Many times it's sold to companies together with Word, Excel, and so on and so forth. Which makes it used by many. I missed here Primavera. I thought Primavera would be among these main softwares here, but it's probably among the other 14 that they claim that are also used by a lot of companies there. And they say that these projects, where is it? These packages can keep track of team members, deliverables, schedules, budgets, priorities, tasks, and other resources. Remember, it's much easier for organizations to keep track of things that happen the same all the time. So for their regular business, for their regular operations, they have systems that keep track and things don't change, so it's easy to track. Projects tend to be very flexible and change a lot, so you need special, it's not that you need special software. Of course, you can, it's possible to develop projects without the support of software. But depending on the complexity of projects, software helps a lot. As I said, all of these softwares here, one of the basic functions they have is they help you find the critical path, because they allow you to define to list all the tasks that will be involved in the project, and those could be dozens, but they could be hundreds or thousands of tasks that need to be developed. They allow you to determine which tasks can only be developed after other tasks are concluded or at least started, and you keep connecting all those things, and then it provides you with the critical path, the quickest way that you can go, and it also helps you check if the project is progressing at the right speed, so that it can be finished in the planned time. And again, my experience with projects is that it's very difficult to finish on time. So what happens is that we use the let's say the software to help us dictate the rhythm. And when we notice that we are lagging behind, basically that's the time where we tell the team, look, we have to work harder because we are lagging behind. We have to do something. It's the time when you include additional resources to make sure that you, of course, including additional resources may cause additional costs, but it will all depend. You're managing those things, and you're deciding, depending on the importance of the project and the importance of having it ready in the planned time and everything. You may decide to spend more money, or at least simply to press your team so that it works harder catch up when things are out of control in terms of the timing. Then there's a discussion here about the organization of the project management efforts. It says it's a struggle for many to bring a project, to bring a project in on time, on budget, and within the scope. Again, this is what you have to manage. This is you want to have it on time, on budget, and within the scope, but it's something that's many times it is difficult to achieve. And then they say that many companies prefer to even develop internally or create a department or an area that is what they call the project management office that is specialized in managing projects, because most of us or most people in the organization are operations people. They know to do their regular business, but they're not specialists in assuring that things happen in a project, that they happen on time, on budget, and within the planned scope. If we think about the project elements here, they claim that there are 4 elements that are essential for a project to succeed. One of them is having project management, so the leadership. The second, obviously, you need a project team, the people that will be developing the tasks. We need a project plan, so basically how you're going to achieve the project, and you need to develop a common project vocabulary. This is interesting. They're saying that people need to understand each other. When we talk about a common project vocabulary, we're saying that when someone says something, that has to be understood by the other people in the project as being precisely that and not something different. And why is this so important? Because we're doing new things. We're doing something that nobody has done. So it's important to define very clearly what we mean by the results that we intend, by the tasks that need to be performed, and so on and so forth. Right? Here they claim that a good project manager defines the project scope realistically. Of course, if the project scope is not realistic, you're going to have several problems, but one of them, you will already not have the trust of your team, right? If you say that you're going to finish the project in a month, and the team that you have considers that that's work for 3 months, how enthusiastically do you think that they will be working on the project? Do you think that they will be understanding that it will take 3 months to do what you think that that can be done in 1 month, that they will work 3 times as hard, or you think that they will simply give up and do something else, or maybe even get out of the project, decide not to abandon the team? There's a chance that they will abandon the team because they think that you're not realistic. A good manager should also manage the project so that it can be completed on time and within budget. This is what the good project management should do. Now, what should the project team do? So the project team has members who work together to ensure that all parts of the project come together correctly and efficiently. And what about the plan now? The plan represents the methodology, the budget, the schedule to be used by the team to execute the project. And finally, a common project vocabulary allows all those involved with the project to understand the project and communicate effectively with one another. Okay. Now they start talking about those 4 elements: so the project management, the project team, the project plan, and the common vocabulary. First item here is the project management. 2 key players in project management are the sponsor and the manager. What is the difference between being those 2 tasks? Who is the sponsor and who is the manager of the project? Who's the boss here, the big boss? Probably the sponsor, right? The sponsor is whoever is paying for the project to happen. Actually, the sponsor may be a financial sponsor, someone who's paying for it, but it could be also someone who's just emphasizing the importance of the project, someone who's a champion, who can help others understand that the project is important for the company. So sometimes the sponsor doesn't bring money to the project. It only brings enthusiasm, or it only brings people's responsibility. But basically, the manager is the one who's going to execute, maybe plan and execute the project. But it's two different roles here. And it's very important. If we are the manager, it's very important that we understand the sponsor's perspective, the sponsor's idea of what the scope is, the sponsor's idea of what the costs should be, the sponsor's ideas of what the time for the project should be. So it's very important for the manager to be very well and fine-tuned with the sponsor. Although sponsors are also good, the stress relationship between the sponsor and the manager should also allow that in case and when the project runs out of control to some extent, and you need more time or you need more resources, the costs are higher, you as the manager are able to discuss that with the sponsor and have the sponsor helping solve the problems. We already know from the beginning that although we only have three things to manage: the scope, the cost, and the timing. We are going to mess up with at least one or two of them, and it's important that the sponsor also understands that these things like that happen and is willing to provide the necessary support in that situation. Specifically, when we're talking about IT projects, my advice is never start an IT project if you don't have a very enthusiastic sponsor, someone who really understands and believes that the project is important and that is willing to do whatever is necessary to keep you on track, even when Murphy attacks, because Murphy will attack. It always does when we're doing something completely new. So the project sponsor here is the one that secures the financial resources for the project, and we have to, as the managers, we should trust that the project sponsor understands very well the importance of the project, so that we have backup when and if we need. Then they discuss here some of the skills that are required from the project manager here. Project manager should identify requirements for the system to be delivered, provide organizational integration by defining the team's structure, assigning team members to work on the project, managing risks and leveraging your opportunities, measuring the project's status, outcomes, and exceptions to provide project control. The project manager should also make the project visible to general management and other stakeholders, measure project status against the plan, often using project management software, take corrective actions when necessary to get the project back on track, and provide project leadership. So notice this person needs to do a lot of things. Project management is not an easy task. And what about the project team itself? The manager uses the teamwork from the members of the team, both to organize and to apply human resources, to motivate and acceptance of change, and to collect and share information throughout the organization. They have here this drawing on figure 11.3 that claims that the least we have the process well established, the project management process here well established, the least we have planned before, the more leadership we'll need to perform the project. The more we have project management processes well set, the least leadership is needed. I think this is sort of intuitive. The more you plan before, the less work you have later. Of course, there's always, Murphy strikes, and there's always, during the development, there's still a lot that needs to be done. But when people already know what is expected from them, they will work as gears. They will be gears that will be better aligned to one another. Okay. What about the project plan? So they claim here that estimation is important because it is used to staff and schedule projects, control or monitor project implementation, and evaluate project success. The problem with estimation is that we hardly ever estimate well. And many times our estimates are not very good, simply because we're doing that for the first time. If we were not doing for the first time, it wouldn't be a project. It would be a regular operation. Right? Most estimates are made at the start of the project. And again, when we know even less, right? During the project, we start learning more. But at the beginning, we know very little. But often they are adjusted because of changes in requirements or scope. Notice the problem that we have as managers here. During the project itself, there may be changes in requirements or scope, regardless of how well we develop the business case at the beginning. If we had a very well developed business case, of course, people will be clear about what is expected from the project. We probably developed the vocabulary better among all those who were involved in the project. But still, projects take some time to happen, and while the projects are developing, the needs of customers change. For example, the environment changes, new technologies appear in the markets that make maybe some of our previous decisions less attractive than before, and so we have to keep making adjustments to the project to comply to these changes in scope. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Project managers use the phases of the project to control the progress of work. They may establish control gates at various points along the way to verify that project work to date and that meets key requirements regarding cost, quality, and features. You've probably already heard of projects that have what they usually call stepping stones or landmarks in the middle of the way. Have you heard of project landmarks? Basically, landmarks is the definition of a place, let's say a point in the project, and we know that at that point we should have performed as a percentage of the scope. We should have had spent a percentage of the cost, and basically in that specific time. So landmarks in a project serve for us to check if we are advancing, if we're progressing at the speed that we expected. It's almost like milestones, right? It's basically show us, yes, we are right, or we are late, or maybe we are ahead. Again, it's very difficult to be ahead in time in projects, but it's good when you get to a milestone and you check the timing, and the timing is perfectly according to the project. That means that you do not have to accelerate in the next phase of the project. The authors here remind us that projects are all about change, right? So we do need to consider that what we're doing is change management all the time, and people need to be given a motivation for change. Remember that in a previous chapter we talked about that living shine model: unfreeze, move, and refreeze. Basically saying you have a situation now that needs to be changed, so you sort of motivate people for the change, then you execute the change, and then later you stop again so that people have time to breathe and understand the current situation before they can keep going or go anywhere further. People don't want to change unless they see some reason for doing so. This is obvious, but this is something that many times project managers seem to forget. They love to complain that their people, their staff, their team are just too satisfied with the status quo, that they don't understand the reasons for change. But in fact, it's part of the project manager's task to mobilize people for change, to show them that they need to that basically that they need to understand that they have to show them the reasons for change so that they feel motivated. People do not get motivated to do something that they don't believe or that they don't think that is reasonable doing. I have here a session in which they discuss the idea of developing a project vocabulary. I don't think I have much to say about that. Okay, then it's talking specifically about the IT projects here. Discussing some ways of measuring the size of projects. Many times we do that based on the amount of human work required to do something. And of course, the more hours of work you need, the more complex the projects, the more you know that there are risks involved to that complexity in the development. And then they start discussing here some of the methodologies or approaches that are used in project development. And I am sure that we will find here methodologies that you have been using in projects that you are part of, at least those who are software developers here. I would say that probably many of you are familiar with agile software development. Does anyone work in an agile context for project development? Pedro is saying yes. In general, agile software development is a good way of developing software, mainly if projects are not too big, right? Agile means, of course, that you have the agility, and that and basically it involves developing a bit and talking to the customer, or checking with the customer if that's where you should be going, right? And so there's a lot of customer involvement in agile development. Another approach that is sort of, at least has the same purpose of agile tries to involve the customer in the development process. So the customer is there and telling, yes, this is what I need, or no, this is not what I need. So every now and then, and we're talking here probably every week or every 2 weeks, customers are brought in to check if the development is happening the way they need, and if not, they change very quickly. They're very in a very agile manner. Another possibility is to, instead of developing already the solution, the whole thing, but involving the customer, is developing a prototype. A prototype is a simpler version of the main product, but a version that is good enough to give the customer a more clear idea of what the final product is going to be, so that the customer can say, yes, that's what I need, or maybe say no, we need to do adjustments here. And those adjustments are thought based on something that is much simpler than developing the whole thing, and then at the end the customer saying, well, that was not what I needed, right? So prototyping, and there are companies that even try to do the things together. Sometimes you are agile in developing a prototype, and thinking of that as still using agile processes involving the customer to develop a prototype, and then from that prototype you say, well, now that we use the prototype to develop some of the things that we've already discussed here. For example, developing a common vocabulary of what is important, what isn't, what the scope should be, and so on and so forth. And then you get into developing the large projects later. So we have the agile software development, we have prototyping, and we also have here what they call well, basically the system development life cycle. This is the more traditional way of thinking of development, a life cycle that starts from the beginning of the beginning and does one thing after the other. This is usually called waterfall or cascade, which means that we keep doing. It's a more bureaucratic way of developing projects. In software, this is used in general for large projects because it's more, let's say, it's much more dependent on a previous the previous definition of a very detailed plan prior to developing the product itself. But it's for large projects, but also for projects that will not change very radically in the future. Large projects sometimes take more than a year to turn into a product, or sometimes 2 years, 3 years, and you don't want to develop a project that has a very detailed planning beforehand, and that you develop without talking to the customer for a long time, and then you present a final product at the end, and then just to figure out that that's not what the customer needed or wanted. So we usually use this more traditional system development life cycle in situations where we're more sure that the scope is not going to change over a period of time, over the period of time that we need to develop the project, and that we are able to understand clearly what the customer will need when the project is over. So we have here, then the author spent some time discussing each one of these topics. I don't know, is there anyone who works? I see that you claim that Rafael is saying that at my company I lead a low-code development squad. Yeah, squads are little teams or small teams to do things quickly. Squads are very, let's say, are ways of working that are very well fit to do to use these agile methods. And so this is what they say here. And we use agile prototyping. Notice that it's already a combination of the agile methodology with the prototyping methodology. Both of them can work together. Many times you use agile methodologies to develop the full product already. Other times you use agile to prototype, and then you use that prototype after you understand what the customer needs are. Then you get into a more cascade or waterfall planning to develop the final products. We tested other approaches, but this one yielded the best results. Probably what Rafael is saying that this led to the best results, it is because it allows for them to achieve feedback from the customers. And notice, the customers is not necessarily, the customers could be another department in the organization. It could be the end customer, whoever is buying the product. But basically, they are discussing it with whoever needs the result of their work. Internal customers are heavily involved in the co-creation of the solution. In my experience, this opportunity to interact greatly reduces criticism of the project. And this is also an interesting point that Rafael is mentioning here. When you get involvement of people, when you get people to co-create the solution, you give them less chance to complain, right? Because they were involved. I mean, their ideas were also there. In fact, you get more involvement. People feel that they are part of the team and they want the things to happen and succeed. And they don't complain because their ideas are already there. It's co-creation is a great way of involving people that otherwise would probably complain. For example, when companies started selling products through the web, and mainly when the customers were able to customize the products that they were buying, basically choosing features or characteristics of the product so that the product was exactly what they wanted or needed, companies started being able to sell their products at a higher price because customers were defining exactly what they wanted. And it's very difficult for someone to ask for a discount on something that was ordered, to the precise needs of the customer. We usually ask for a reduction in price when we're buying something that is not exactly what we wanted, and then we are sort of thinking, should we buy this or not? And then we say, oh, give me a discount, and then I'll be a little happier about buying something that I don't want. That's basically what we do. And so the co-creation is a process of, Rafael is right here, of reducing criticism, simply because people are not going to criticize their own suggestions. Okay, so it's a good point there. In fact, project management involves, we talk about achieving the scope for a cost in a specific amount of time, but we have to do that with resources that are available to us. And when we're talking about human resources, we're talking about resources that think by themselves and that have their own needs and interests, and may not be willing to cooperate, at least to the extent we wished. So that also makes the process even more complex. Think that when you have people involved in a regular operation, you're not too concerned if they are happy or not about what they're doing, because you already know how much time it takes for them to do it right. So if they're working slower than they should, you can point out and say, hey, last week you were much faster. Come on, work faster. But when we're talking about a project that we still don't know very clearly what the result is going to be, We don't know very clearly the resources that we will need. The whole situation is very fuzzy, and it's much more difficult for us to even to assess if those involved are putting the energy that one would expect, right? Because we do not have against what to compare. So again, involving people and making sure that they feel part of they feel responsible for the results is something important here. All right. Does anyone else? I know that Rafael is claiming that they sort of use a mixture of agile and prototyping there. Anyone else that uses this kind of methodology in developing and possibly developing software? These methodologies are used very often for software development. So if you wish, just open your mic or just write there, and we'll comment on your on whatever you do. Yeah, go on, Nilson.
Hey, good evening. A couple of years ago, I joined a team in my company to develop a software to find in the data bank fix resources and destinations in requirement of judges and the police stations. They wanted to know because of fraud, clients they claim, and these authorities ask us, what happened? They formed the team. I joined this team, and we identified an area there in the bank where you work for that is required so much this kind of system. So what we did, we studied the flow, how this is required in the system of the bank, and then we prepared, a project, a flow way to deliver it to the IT team. Okay, it was perfect, but I complained a lot to my colleagues there in the team because we were delaying a lot, to complete this task, and it was starting this fraud around all the banks in Brazil, and our other directors wanted to have this also. So as because of that, I think time is very important. As we delayed, my colleagues didn't help me, to go faster. They started the same project in another department, in another directory, and then we only about it, And they at least they get our plans, our sheets, and did made in order to make the software. At least
yes, because sometimes there is, of course, as projects may be developed by parts of the company that feel that they need that. Sometimes it's not well communicated to others, and you may even have some gray areas where two different departments are developing exactly the same software, and people only know about that at the end. Yeah.
It becomes a power competition, and the directory was like the most important ordered to make, and they consulted our project to make it better. But anyway, because of the time, I think the end time was to be in 1 month. But my colleagues, I went on vacation. When I came back, didn't you deliver yet? No, not yet. We are considering some points and some points. And then when we delivered, they were
someone else had already done it.
Yeah. No, another the director of technology was already going through, and they asked our papers, all papers, our interviews, our flow.
Yeah. You probably, so what happened is that you probably worked almost as if it were an original prototype or an original idea that it could develop further. Okay. Here, with respect to agile software, the development process needs to respond to challenges created by dynamic customer demands and complex software requirements. When you have this dynamic customer demands, agile is the way to go, because otherwise, if you want to use a more traditional project management concept, when you finish your project, you will figure out that that's not what the customer needs any longer, because their needs are dynamic. It's changing. Right? Dynamic here means changing over time. In response to these challenges, agile software development methodologies are being increasingly championed. In one 2018 survey, 97% of the respondents said that agile was practiced somewhere in their organizations. Of course, agile is not the solution for all, right? Agile is good for relatively small projects that can be developed by small teams, 5 people, 10 people, not teams that are not much larger than that, and that can deliver fast, can deliver results quickly, so that for projects that will be ready in 1 or 2 months. We're not talking about, there's no development agile development for projects that will take 3 years, right? Then you need, because agile, the advantage of agile is that it responds easily to dynamic requests. The problem is that there's not a lot of planning. It's more like execute and talk to the customers, try to understand what they need, implement that, check with them if that's what they need. It's good for small projects. If the project becomes big, it will be messy and it will be very difficult to organize things if done using agile. To deal with unpredictability, agile methodologies tend to be people rather than process oriented, right? Something that is people oriented works well in a small number of people. If we think about hundreds of people or thousands of people, then you cannot be people oriented any longer. You have to be process oriented. One of their mantra is code a little, test a little. So just write a little code and then go there and check with the customer if that's what they need. You depend on more interactions with customers and frequent redesign to accommodate modifications emerging from the changing user requirements. So what the user wanted 2 weeks before may not be, when you deliver that, they're going to say, well, but I already need some changes here. This is something that is easy to do in small projects. What else? They're developed using increments that are usually called sprints. And each sprint is usually performed in 2 to 4 week interactions. It starts with planning and with a review, and includes every other system development lifecycle phase in between. So they're basically reviewing everything that they're doing every 2 weeks or so. They mention here also extreme programming. I have never, I've done some development in using agile. Extreme programming is something that I've heard of. I've never done anything, and for me, it sounds pretty much like just a trend of agile. I don't know if anyone uses extreme programming to say in which ways it is different to the more common agile methodologies. Is there anyone there that is? Pedro says, currently I'm the only developer working on a large project, and I have many coordinators and managers from different levels sharing their feedbacks and needs to me almost every week. So it's a very dynamic coding process. Bad for me, good for them. Yeah, well, bad for you in terms that they may change ideas in the middle of the way, Pedro, but at the same time, good for you also that you make sure that you're tuning what you're doing to what they need. The only concern I have here is that you say it's a large project. When it's a large project, and if it's a project that will take much longer, you may already consider some more, let's say, more traditional planning of the project. It may be interesting to have there. Although it may also be a large project because it's a one-person project, and when you think, it may not necessarily be that large. I mean, it would be a project that will take you a year to do, but if you were 10 people, it would be a month project. So notice that it's large here may also mean different things depending on how we look at it. The only thing that I'd be concerned is that Pedro has to check if this is actually a project or if you're just doing maintenance on whatever already exists, depending on how the thing is going. But anyway, so extreme programming is a more prescriptive agile methodology that revolves about 12 practices. It claims here what the practices are. Again, I'm not very familiar with this. For me, if I was saying that in my previous job we used to use XP in the context of a small startup, it's a nice choice. Fail fast, a lot of interactions, small releases. Yeah, but again, when you mention these things, for me, this is agile, precisely the mention of agile projects. I again, my difficulty with extreme programming is that it seems to me that it's just a way of doing agile, performing an agile methodology. Notice it's fail fast. Yeah, fail fast is also part of the agile methodology. It's better that you detect that something is not what the customer wants in 2 weeks' time at the most, right? After 2 weeks, you meet the customer, and the customer says, well, that was not exactly what I needed. It's easy for you to, lots of interactions. See, those interactions is customer comes, talks to you, gives feedback, you implement something, show to customers again. And so again, the things seem very similar to me. I don't know if anyone knows any more radical difference between extreme programming and just the regular agile methodologies that most companies use. Just right there, or just open your mics. And then here they also mentioned this dynamic system development methods. It says that the dynamic system development method is based on 4 types of iterations: study, the business and feasibility; functional model; design and build; and implementation. This is what I claim to be the probably the way that you develop more sophisticated, sometimes even more sophisticated projects. Then we have a box here on a closer look on how well do agile practices work in global systems development projects. Of course, agile, as we said, it's very good for small teams. For quite a while, people said that people needed to be face to face, but that's not the case. We do have nowadays a lot of project teams that do not involve people that are co-located, and in fact, many times they are located in different continents. And of course, one challenge would be, for example, when you have global teams, one challenge would be this communication where there is no overlap in the workday hours of team members. Think of someone working in India, for example, I don't know, GMT plus 3 or 4, 3 hours ahead of the Greenwich line, and then other working with colleagues in California 7 hours after the Greenwich line. So maybe we're talking about 10 hours difference, 12 hours difference. Those people are never in the office at the same time. It makes almost impossible to work in a project where everyone needs to have the same vocabulary. Everyone needs to understand what is being done all the time. So, but it's challengeable. But companies are being able to do this. Of course, they shift a couple of days of the week. So they work. One of the groups work late one evening of the week, or 2 weeks of the evening. The others arrive early, and then they can talk and connect and make sure that the team is working. Then we have here a discussion on prototyping. We've already seen that many times it's used even together with agile methodologies. Prototyping is a type of evolutionary development that uses the method of building systems in which developers get a general idea of what is needed from the user, and then build a fast, high-level version of the system at the beginning of the project. Basically, the idea of a prototype is to make sure that the developer understood what the customer needs, right? And then after they say, yes, that's what we need, then you focus on writing the code in a more traditional way. And traditional here, for example, if you use the system development life cycle, that cascading methodology, waterfall methodology, that you do one step after the other, but at least you already have a good idea of what the customers need. There are some problems with prototyping. And in fact, the problems with prototyping are sort of the same problems that we have with agile, right? Difficult. First, documentation may be more difficult to write as the system evolves because of frequent changes over time, right? This also happens with agile. Also, users often do not understand that the final prototype may not be scalable to an operational version of the system without additional costs and organizational commitments. This is a huge problem. They say, yes, we can deal with the prototype. We don't need you to develop the full system. And you say, no, the prototype was just to make sure that I understood what you needed. It only works here in your PC, but it doesn't work for the whole company. And then people don't understand that to make that simple idea work for everyone, it will require a lot more effort than what has already been done. Well, they mentioned a few other issues here. Also, Prototyping also has the difficulty of integration across a broad range of requirements. So this approach is better suited for quick and dirty types of systems. I mean, you need to solve a problem and without a lot of changes afterwards. Then we have the waterfall methods, the system development life cycle, more traditional. Used to be the way that we developed software in the 90s, for example. Most of it was done using this system development life cycle strategy here, that basically, or many also call it waterfall method. Basically, you planned everything at the beginning. You made sure that the customer understood the planning. They signed that that's what they needed. And 3 years later, you handed the software to them. And then if they told you, this is not what I need any longer, you would say, well, tough luck, because that's what you paid for. And this is what we are delivering. Of course, not very good for today's dynamic environments. But again, we don't know better for large projects. If you have to develop a large product, you still probably, you may do some prototyping before, you may do some agile development so that you get an understanding of what is needed, and then you get to this sort of development here. It is a very structured approach, and here they say, despite being a highly structured approach, no single well-accepted STLC process exists. So each company does it their own way. What else is important here? Many times, as you're bringing a new system, usually big systems, you bring it alongside the new system alongside what you had before. So it's a parallel conversion, just to make sure that if it doesn't work, the company doesn't fail, right? The old system may stop running as soon as the new system is installed, or the new system may be installed in stages across locations or in phases. So you can do it both things happening in parallel until you trust the new system. You may just quit the old system and implement the new, risky, but sometimes that's what's done. Or you may be installing in parts as it gets ready. But of course, in that case, you have to integrate the new with the old, which is also troublesome, right? What causes issues. What else here? Let's see. Previous experience may not provide the skills needed for the current projects. Even though objectives that were specified for the system were not met, those objectives may reflect a scope that is too broad or too narrow, or has changed since the project has initiated. Again, this tends to be used in projects that are so big that when the project is ready, customers already feel that they wished to have something different. Guys, I just realized that it's almost 9:30 here. We have not even had our break yet. Maybe let's have a shorter break today, right? Maybe come back at 9:35. Okay, 12 minutes from now, and because I still want to go through several pages of material here with you. Okay, so 9:35, we're back. Okay, see you guys. Just want to go straight to page 261, where the authors are talking about managing IT project risk. Again, as I said, IT projects tend to be riskier than other kinds of projects, and partially it's because IT, tends to be new technology that still little know about. So we can hear that the IT projects are often distinguished from many non-IT projects on the basis of their high levels of risk. And here they define risk is perceived as the possibility of additional cost or loss due to the choice of an alternative. Right? You choose an alternative, and that brings you some risk. A different alternative would bring you different risk. And the authors here claim that the risk is a function of complexity, clarity, or lack of clarity, and size. right, size of the project. So of course they start discussing here each one of these three components or of the risk. Let's start with complexity. Basically, complexity happens partially because technology changes really quickly, and when technology changes quickly, you tend to get people more specialized on specific parts of it. And the more you specialize, the more knowledge is fragmented, the more you need to coordinate or integrate, right? Here they claim that the fast rate of change also creates new vocabulary to learn as technologies are implemented, which can undermine effective communication. Remember that one of the important things in a project is to develop a common vocabulary. Basically new technologies bring new vocabularies that still need to be, let's say, made common to all those involved. The development of more complex technologies also accelerates this trend towards specialization. That was what I was saying before among project team members, and multiplies the number of interdependencies that must be tracked in the project management. Interdependencies means if different parts of the project depend on other parts, you need to provide for those connections, for those integrations, for those interfaces. And the more of them you have, the more complex the project becomes. Developing a corresponding number of interfaces to integrate the pieces, this is also important then. Okay. So this is for complexity. When we think about clarity, a project becomes risky if it's hard to define. Users cannot easily state their needs or define what they want from the system. If they cannot do that, you don't have clarity, and therefore the project becomes more complex. User demands for the system or regulations that guide its structure change considerably over the life of the project. So again, you cannot have clarity because things are changing over time. So basically, clarity happens when things do not change, or when when the change can be easily documented. But in most situations, projects are not. You don't have the clarity simply because things do change, and you cannot document that change the way you wished. With respect to size, it also plays a big role in project risk. The authors here claim that the following characteristics relate to the risks that involve size. Large budgets relative to other budgets in the organization. Large number of team members, so you have more people to coordinate. Large numbers of organizational units involved in the project, people with different ideas, with different needs. Large number of programs or components, simply more items to be cared about. Large number of function units. Large number of source lines of code. The more lines of code you have, the more, of course, you have to pay attention and make sure that it's coherent, and that implies in riskier projects. So how do we manage this project risk level? Risk management is usually a two-stage process. So first we have to assess the risk, and then we have to take actions to try and control the level of risk involved. And then they start dealing with each one of those aspects of risk: how we manage complexity, how we manage clarity, and how we manage how we manage and how we manage size. Okay. When we think about complexity, the authors claim here that we should manage the level of technical skills of the team. And of course, we may decide that we want our team members to have technical skills, and sometimes we decide that we are going to outsource that and borrow it from, or that we'll rely on consultants or vendors, as I said before. Sometimes consultants, as they are involved in projects that are sort of similar to the one that we are carrying out in our organization, but they do that in different organizations over time, they are able to foresee things that for us are difficult. But on the other hand, the project manager will have to balance the benefits achieved from bringing in outsiders at the cost of not developing in-house the skills, the skill set that is the outsiders have. Sometimes it's safer to bring in that outside perspective, but sometimes doing that also prevents us from developing skills that will be necessary or will be important in the future. So when the project is over and all consultants leave, will the organization be able to manage without them? Remember that for now, this is a project. After the project is finished, we will end up having an operation that will rely on the results of that project. But have we developed the required skills so that we can do that on our own? Or will we be dependent on external consultancy forever? This is something that needs to be assessed with respect to the complexity of the project. We should also consider here the integration of the project to the organization. In general, highly complex projects require good communication among the team members, which help them to operate as integrated as an integrated unit. But the thing is, after the project is not a project any longer, how well were we able to integrate the results of the project to an operation that will keep going in the future? And they also discuss ways of managing clarity aspects of the project risk. They claim that we need to rely more heavily on the users to define system requirements. And in fact, this was something that I think some of you showed here when you said, oh, in our organization, we try to involve customers in co-creation. When you do that, you're actually trying to engage the users or those that will use the system that you're generating with the project from an earlier stage. And then, of course, you can also manage the stakeholders themselves. Many times there are conflicting needs of different stakeholders, conflicting expectations. This is what I mentioned before, that with my undergraduate students, we develop that Machiavellic table in which we include a line for each stakeholder, and then several columns in which we say how those, we try to figure out how those different stakeholders will perceive the change that we are proposing, will perceive the results of the project, if the project will lead to them to a better stance, if they will feel threatened, or what. They also mentioned here in this managing project stakeholders that what happens with this project sponsors, claiming that the sponsors use their power and influence to remove project barriers by gathering support from various social and political groups, both inside and outside the organization. This is why I claim that it's so important for the project manager to trust the sponsor and to also be trusted by the sponsor, because the sponsor is going to be very important in supporting the development of the project based on the sponsor's capacity to help overcome problems when the scope is not right, when the cost is not right, when the time is not right, and so on and so forth. In order to sustain or to maintain the commitment to projects, the authors here recommend that this should be the manager of the project should try to put an effort to make sure that all those stakeholders keep their commitment throughout the whole life cycle of the project. And this is where we have some of the reasons for determinants of commitment of IT projects. In fact, this was a table that I was looking for at the beginning of the class, and I was referring to the table that discussed the success of the project. But this was the table that I was looking for. Here we're discussing what makes people committed to IT projects. The project itself, right? So the objective attributes of the project, such as cost, benefits, expected difficulty, and duration. Psychological issues, here factors managers use to convince themselves things are not so bad, such as previous experience, personal responsibility, or outcomes, responsibility for outcomes and biases. Social aspects, elements of the various groups involved in the process, such as rivalry, norms of consistency, and need for external validation. Notice again, all these things need to be concerned in that Machiavellic table that I was mentioning, right? Some of these issues are even hidden, and you have to sort of figure out how they will impact the commitment of stakeholders. Organizational issues, structural attributes of the organization, such as political support, alignment with values and goals, and cultural issues. So notice that it's tough to be a project manager, because the manager is not managing just the project. It's managing a lot of other issues, that some of which are sort of hidden, but still need to be understood so that the project succeeds. Then this is the item that I also mentioned at the beginning. Sometimes it would be important to be able to pull the plug, which means to stop a project when we notice that things did not happen as expected at the beginning. There are projects that simply go the wrong way, and people insist on keeping them going simply because they cannot admit that they were mistaken, that they committed wrong judgments or whatever. And here the authors say that research shows that the amount of money already spent on a project biases managers towards continuing to fund the project, even if its prospects for success are questionable. I'm not sure that if being aware of this will make you better at deciding to quit projects, because I think we do have this tendency of trying to insist on things that are not working simply because we believe that we can still turn them into obtaining favorable results. But when they say that research showed this, it means there's a lot of situations in which managers simply cannot admit that they were wrong, and this costs a lot of money to organizations. So be aware that it would be great if you could spot those situations in which the project is gone, as the Americans say, is gone south, and you're still trying to recover it when recovering is not the wise way to go. And then we have here some discussion of how you assess the success of projects, and this is the table that I had mistakenly called upon at the beginning of the class, but because at that stage I wanted to talk about basically the determinants of commitments for IT projects, and now we're here discussing success dimension. So the success of a project will have to be related to the way it used the resources, and only the resources that were planned, not more than what had been planned, or even less than what had been planned originally. The impact of the results of the project on customers, business success, basically profit, and preparation for a different future. In many cases, what we want here is to develop a project that allows the company to be sometimes less dependent on infrastructure that doesn't make sense any longer, less dependent on ideas that do not belong. So it may relate to also changing the culture, so it allows for the digital transformation, the business transformation that is required. And many times we don't assess this the way we should, but it is important for the companies to develop projects that simply help them define where to go in the future. I wished we had a little more time, but at the same time, I do think that we've accomplished a lot here. I wish we could have discussed at least one of the study cases. As I said, I like to go through at least one of them every class, so that you think of the cases that you are writing. I had thought of maybe discussing that one on the Dutch railways. So it was the study case 11.1. They basically mentioned here that they started it originally outsourcing the project to an external vendor. It was not very successful. Then they outsourced again, and the second time they outsourced to a company that developed the project in a agile fashion. And they discuss a bit of the challenges that they had, even involving some of the team working from Holland and speaking Dutch, while part of the team was in India. Of course, and of course, the conversation between the two teams needed to happen in English. So they also discuss a little of the challenges involved, which had already appeared during the chapter, the challenges that happen in global projects, for example, and mainly if you want to do agile development, where you have different teams working different hours, but at the same time needing to be well connected, well integrated, to make sure that the project works. But I don't think that today we will get to this discussion. Maybe for next class, we will discuss chapter 10, IT sourcing. We're getting close to the end. You see that there's only a couple of more chapters before we finish this journey. It's interesting to see that we have been going through a very thick IS IT book, and hopefully this is providing you at least some food for thoughts, as the Americans say, ideas on how to integrate technology and information technology to the businesses of your organizations. Maybe this is the place for us to stop today. I don't know if you have any questions, any further comments. No? So let's stop here, and we'll come back next week to discuss then chapter 10. Okay? See you guys.